Well, hello all. Welcome to the very first episode of the Unpolished Authentic Soul. And what you're going to get is a very unpolished and authentic soul. My name's Christine. I turned 43 this month, so I'm a geriatric millennial. And just to prove this point, let's look above. Yes, Land Before Time, and apparently a dust particle. My Little Pony. Okay, back to it. So I have wanted to start this podcast for some time now, and truth be told, I've had my equipment for easily a month. But I found myself waiting for the right time, for my office to be put together right, for me to plan out the episodes and put myself together. And yesterday I just decided, you know what, Christine, you're never going to do this. I'm a neurospicy person, so I'm neurodivergent, ADHD, highly suspecting autism. And editing and me, we don't get along. I might film a video and then I'll never edit it. I can't tell you the amount of doom piles I have in my house that I intended to sell. Very good intention, I might add. But the follow through is terrible. So, who am I and why am I doing this? I'm just a fellow soul who's trying to exist on this earth in this thing called life. And I don't plan to edit these episodes whatsoever. I don't plan to have my outfit planned out, my hair done. I'm wearing a hat today. It's just whenever I feel like I want to sit down and I'm moved to create an episode. It's very possible, and it's probably going to happen at least a few times an episode, if not more, where my brain's going to freeze. I'm going to get off topic. I might ramble a little bit, but hey, it is what it is. I'm a human. I have ADHD, and I'm just going to go with it. So the point of this podcast is not to be perfect. I don't care if it ever brings in any form of monetization. So all these workshops that I've seen ads for on Instagram, I've just bypassed. Would it be great? Sure, obviously be great if it blew up. Of course, who wouldn't love that? But the purpose of this is to get my message across and what I've experienced in my life to everyone else, because we're all doing this together. And a lot of times we feel alone in that process, and that is such a difficult thing to have to deal with when you're already going through it. And whether or not we plan to do something great with our life or not, we all want to find our purpose, right? We all want to know, why are we here? I think even if it's just a passing thought, we all wonder, like, okay, what's this thing? Why am I here? Why am I existing? Why am I working in 9 to 5? Why am I, all these questions, right? The answer is highly specific for each individual person. But the one thing I can say is this: the journey seems to be the same in a lot of the structure for all of us. And it is, we step out into this thing called our path, our purpose, healing, whatever it might be, wherever we start our journey. And now we're knee deep in it. We know we want to go forward. We can't turn around and go back. Not that we really want to, although sometimes it's tempting, I'm not going to lie. But we find ourselves at this place where we don't have anything figured out. We might think we have it figured out, and we might think we know where we're going, but it's like stepping out into the drizzle and you're like, oh, I don't need an umbrella, right? I'm good. And then by the time it's too late, turn around, go back home and get your umbrella, the storm just pours down and you're like, okay, now what? Okay, either I turn around and run back and go get my umbrella, and the storm's probably stopped by then, and then what? Or I can just keep going forward, right? Right. And when I have been in my healing journey for 13 years now. I had my first spiritual awakening in January of 2012. I didn't even know I needed a spiritual awakening at all. I was blissfully unaware of so many things. I felt happy, and I was happy, don't get me wrong. But I had my head in the sand. I lived under a rock. I was very naive. But even at that point in my life, I had been through a lot of hardships. And I think the way I learned to cope with it was to go inside myself and just isolate. And I'm not even sure I ever had a plan for my isolation. Honestly, I think I just got kind of used to going inside myself, and I'd let the emotions pass, and then I'd go about my day, my life, whatever it might be. So 13 years later, I'm on the tail end of my healing journey, and it looks nothing like what I would have ever thought a healing journey would look. I truly believed that I didn't think it was all full of sunshine and rainbows, right? But it's like every time I felt like a breath of fresh air would hit me, the next wave would just almost take me under. And then I'd be sitting there wondering, like, okay, now what? Now what? So what I want to do with this first episode is tell you a little about who I am. And I may look off to this way again. This is the Unpolished Authentic Soul. We're not looking for perfection here. We're just looking for the message. So, hey, if you're with me, then you're with me. But I think this is going to resonate with a lot of people. And so anyway, back to my point. There's my rambling. That will happen a few times per episode, if not more. I want to talk about how to find your life purpose and how to step into it. And that's a really good starting episode because there's so many things that go into your life purpose that we can talk about in future episodes. And there's going to be a lot of it, I'm sure. Some of these episodes, I may repeat some of the things I've already said, but repetition's not always a bad thing. But I'll always try to get to the point and not ramble too much. So I met my now ex-husband in high school, and we got married at 20. We were great friends. We were married for almost 20 years, but we both drifted off into different areas, which a lot of people have those concerns when you're 20 years old and getting married. But, I had the world figured out, and that's fine. My marriage taught me a lot about who I am. It gave me my child, and it shaped Christine. So I learned a lot from that relationship. I'll go into more in another episode about my childhood, but growing up, I had a stable childhood. I had great parents, a brother about 5 years older than me, but there was a lot of instability as well. I struggled with my weight. I had glasses. I was teased very heavily from ages 9 to about 13. My brother, when I was about 9 years old, went to live with his biological father in Texas. I live in North Carolina. And so that impacted me. And some trauma happened to him out there. And so when he came back, he had been introduced to drugs, and the drugs just got worse. And so I was dealing with the drug abuse of my brother at home and everything that went with that. The bullying at school. School became my solace from home, and home became my solace from school. And so I never really had a place where I could just breathe at that age. And that was a very impressionable point in my life. And I think it's what made me start to go inside myself as a coping mechanism. And it worked until it didn't work. And so then my first job, I was 16. I worked at a law firm, very reputable, prestigious law firm, as a paralegal's assistant. And so I entered corporate America at a very young age. And so I was always a little bit ahead of my peers with my maturity. At least it seemed that way. Not my emotional and healing and the soul maturity that matters the most. But nonetheless, I worked in corporate America clear up until June 30th of this year. And I'm currently unemployed. But here's why. And sometimes I say, be careful what you ask God for. And I say that lightly because I never regret asking for God's help, ever, okay? I see God as my higher power. You may see some other entity as your higher power, and that's fine. But for me, I have believed in God from a very young age. And in my early 20s, I really started forming a relationship with God. I'd speak to God as if he was my best friend sometimes. Numerous times a day, I'd speak to the Lord. And one day I'll speak to signs and synchronicities and things that have occurred that have really helped shape my belief in my higher power. But for now, I want to focus on how to find your purpose. So last November, I was, and let me back up just a little bit. I did leave out one important part. Over here, you see the Serenity Prayer. And that is by design. So, as of September 7th, so this Sunday will be, I need to straighten this up. I will be 2 years sober from alcohol. My spiritual awakening happened in January 2012. And by May of 2015, I had developed a binge drinking problem. And that carried on until, I want to say, it was on and off. I could drink 3 days at a time and stop for 2 weeks. But the more I drank and the more it progressed over the following 8 years, the worse that it got. Sometimes the binges were 3 weeks. Sometimes I could stop for 3 months. There was no rhyme or reason, but I knew I couldn't touch alcohol. And so September 6th of 2023, actually September 5th of 2023, I was on the tail end of a week-long binge. I had begged my parents, just take me somewhere. I needed help. I was on what I thought was the tail end of my healing journey. And in the grand scheme of things, when we're talking about 13 years, yes, that was still on the tail end. But I couldn't understand where I was going wrong. I couldn't understand, why am I still drinking? Why? It made no sense to me. I thought I was done drinking, but Labor Day weekend, my child was at her dad's house and I was unsupervised. So what happens when an unsupervised neurodivergent person with trauma that's not quite healed and has a binge drinking problem is in their house with money? Chances are they're going to partake in said substance abuse. So that's what I did. And my parents had come to my house on September the 5th. And again, I begged them to take me somewhere. And September the 6th, I was checked into Asheville Detox Center, which is a fantastic facility. I will never speak anything but the highest regards for that center. I was there for a week. And then after that, I went to Oasis River Recovery in Ocoee, Tennessee. An amazing facility. I had a great experience there. It was like summer camp, honestly. And it was a blast. I met a lot of great people. And so let's get back to November of last year. So November 2024, I was kind of going through a hard time with a relationship. And in that, and I'll speak to that in future episodes as well. But this particular day, I was sitting down in my thoughts, isolating as I do. And I was having a moment with God. And I said, Lord, please put me on the path to my life purpose. I didn't give another thought to it at that point. Let me grab my drink here. I didn't give it another thought. And this is sometimes when I say be careful what you ask God for, here's where I'm going with that. I never regret it. Again, let me say I never regret it. Sometimes I might think I regret it, but I don't ever really truly regret it. But I prayed that prayer, not knowing what that meant, not knowing what my purpose was. I knew my purpose involved helping people. I just did not know how. But I trusted that I would figure it out, right? So less than 7 days later, I think this was a Sunday I prayed the prayer. I think it was Thursday of that week. So what, four days later? I found out that my role at my company, I was a data governance analyst, operations analyst. And anyway, I found out that due to contractual changes, my position was going to be going away. I was like, I've got 7 months, right? I'm good. And so I kind of got used to the idea, right? And I was like, gosh, that's too coincidental. Like these two things have got to go hand in hand in some way. And I didn't know how, I didn't understand. But I went on about my life, and with the relationship I spoke of, I ended up getting distance from my boyfriend. And again, I'll speak more to this down the road, but he's an amazing human being, but he's buried with years and years and years of trauma. And so he allows his alter ego to rule his life. And I had one too. I came back and was redeemed from trauma and addiction. He struggles with addiction as well. But either way, I had gotten some distance from him. I felt that the Lord was telling me, Christine, you need to let him focus on his journey and his healing, but you can't heal him. And I had a wound that made me feel like I could fix someone. It's like empath 101, right? But I found myself in March. So the separation started, or the distance started, in February. And then in March, I was just going about my life. I had been kind of singing a little bit in 2025, not really putting a whole lot into it. I didn't really think I could sing. For the vast majority of my life, I did not believe that I could sing. I felt like I could always sing emotional parts of songs really well, but something was missing. I couldn't do the soft parts. I just thought I couldn't sing. So I was like, okay, I guess I just thought like there's a little troll that lives in people's throats, and some people's trolls are stronger than others. I don't really believe that, but I don't know what I thought. Maybe certain things with their vocal cords were different than mine. I didn't know. I didn't really put a lot of thought into it. Late March, I had, there goes my mind drifting. Let's focus, Christine. Late March, I come across an Instagram reel, and it said, here's how to get higher notes. I always thought I was a contralto, which I am, but I didn't think I could sing upper registers at all. And so I practiced this technique. It was something about extending your tongue and making the sound that way. And it was probably 2:00 in the morning. I want to say it was like March 22nd, something like that, of this year. And for reference, today is September 3rd, Wednesday, September 3rd. I should have said that in the beginning, but hey, this is the Unpolished Authentic Soul. So you get what you get and you don't pitch a fit. But back to my point. I noticed my cats, they looked at me like when I was singing, and it's like my cat came up to me and almost as if I was singing so beautifully, like, Mommy, I've never heard you sing like this. And I was like, yeah, me neither. Well, let's, join the club. And so I spent the next few weeks practicing this. And I thought, Christine, you really need a good vocal coach. But I knew I could sing some of the parts very well. And I knew I really needed a vocal coach that knew what they had in front of them and how to help me best. And I didn't really know where to go. I didn't know, do I hit the yellow pages? Gosh, that's that geriatric millennial. The yellow pages probably exist, but I don't think anybody uses them. Do I hit Google? What do I do? And I thought back to a friendship that I've had for 7 years. And I won't speak his name here until I get permission to speak his name on these podcasts. But he has been in the music industry for well over 30 years. And I met him when I worked at the mall, Concord Mills. I think it's probably still the biggest mall in the state of North Carolina. But even as I'm talking, like, do you tell people you live in North Carolina? Which I already did, but my accent kind of gives it away. So I'm not going to pretend like you can't at least pinpoint the region that I'm in. But I met him when we were coordinating a very now famous performer to perform at the mall on Black Friday. And we maintained contact throughout the years. And so I reached out to him. I said, hey, do you know anybody that is a really good vocal coach? And so he sent me to my vocal coach, which I don't want to say his name in this one either until I get the go ahead. I don't think that he would have a problem with me speaking his name. I think he'd be more than happy for me to say his name. But regardless, I just want to make sure. And this was very unplanned, if you can't already tell from my t-shirt, and I have yoga pants on. So the sweater, I'll always have a sweater on. It'll be my little Mrs. Rogers, if you will, vibe. But I found myself taking vocal lessons, and now I'm at the point where I'm starting to write lyrics for my first song called Healing. And I have no idea where that's going to go, but it's going somewhere. I'm trusting God. So let's actually get into how do you find your life purpose. I think I've spent probably 20 minutes talking about myself, but I wanted to give you all a brief, semi-brief. I say brief as if 20 minutes is super brief, but anyway, there goes the rambling again. Again, the Unpolished Authentic Soul. So to find your life purpose, what is it that you do? How do you find that? Well, first, it starts with, do you have a higher power? For me, there are going to be things I say where people may disagree, and that's fine. My experience is not someone else's experience. I believe that you have to believe in some higher power, whatever that is. Again, for me, it's God, it's the Lord, and I rely on him for guidance. I try to pay attention to my intuition and what I'm being nudged to do, such as random podcasts like this. I have no idea what I'm doing, but have a higher power, okay? But if you have no clue what your purpose is, it's perfectly fine to say, okay, higher power, okay, God, for me, please put me on the path to my life purpose. You're probably going to start seeing things moving. Just pay attention, okay? Pay attention to thoughts that come to your mind, nudges, signs. Again, I'll do an episode on signs and synchronicities to pay attention to, because they're all around us and they're a lot more complex and detailed than you might think. And sometimes I think I'm making things up or I'm looking for signs, but some of it is just too on point to be coincidental. But the one piece of advice, if you really want to know, at least a general idea what your purpose is, what is the one thing that your soul has always been called to do? And if you feel like you haven't been able to do it for one reason or another, why is that? Look into that, okay? Because I didn't think I could sing. I really did not think I could sing. But here, we're going to take another layer, because for me, I can sing, but I can't sing. And you're like, what do you mean, Christine? That makes no sense. Well, I'll explain. I have struggled with acid reflux disease since I was 16, 17, something like that. And through years of just negligence from my body, drinking, I've developed scar tissue in my throat. I probably have 2/3 blockage in my throat, and I all but pass out sometimes trying to sing. And I'm a powerhouse singer. So I may be able to sing songs by Whitney Houston and Celine Dion, but it's not going to flow as well as they sound, not anywhere close. I can hit the notes, I can sound beautiful. One take does not sound the exact same as the next take or the take before that. And it's because I don't have steady airflow. But I feel like a lot of people, from what I've heard and from my experience, your life purpose is something that your soul has always been drawn to. But for one reason or another, or 100, you feel like you can't do it. And a lot of the times, the only thing standing between us and something that we want, or us and our purpose, is ourselves, is our mind. It's the limitations that we put in our mind. And, a lot of this sounds great as I'm talking about it, but actually implementing it is another thing, having to fight our brains and the self-doubt and everything else. And this is why I say a higher power is very important for this process. So here I am. It is about 5 months after meeting my vocal coach and mentor, writing my first song, and I'm stuck. I'm absolutely beyond stuck. One, I've never written a song a day in my life, okay? And two, I've got the scar tissue. But here's the best part. And this is why I said, be careful what you ask God for. I gotta say that lightly, because this is going to be a blessing and I know it. But the one thing people don't realize is, for God to bring in blessings, for the universe to bring in blessings, okay? Things have to be removed from your path that you may not want removed. You may think you don't want it removed, but it has to be removed or renegotiated in some way that you may not be exactly happy about. And there's going to be a time where nothing makes sense and it feels like everything is exploded and blown up in your face. And you're like, what on earth am I doing right now? Seriously, what am I doing? I have yet to meet one person or see one story where people did not get to the point where they were about to pull their hair out and just screaming out to the universe, like, why? And just terribly confused. That's what I call the messy middle. See? There's that neurodivergence. Messy middle. That's what I'm trying to say. Those are the words that I'm trying to say. So anyway, back to my point. I mentioned my job went away on June 30th. I've been looking for jobs. I even had 3 interviews for a job at a company I used to work for. I thought that it was going to come through. I really and truly thought it was going to come through. I thought I had gotten signs, But I think I was reading more into that than what was really there. I do believe there was a purpose for these interviews happening. They even made it seem almost, I don't say that in a way that it's their fault. So let me make sure that I preface this by saying that. I do believe I was one of the top contenders. But for whatever reason, an internal candidate beat me out. And so that's fine. I did throw a little bit of a temper tantrum with God for about 5 or 10 minutes. And that's okay. Our higher power can handle it, okay? Because I always try to keep in my mind is, yes, the universe has to remove things sometimes to bring in our blessings. But we have to remember that when that happens, the blessings will come back, sometimes tenfold or more, in ways that we can't possibly imagine, that our human brains cannot foresee, okay? But it's very hard when you're in the moment and something didn't go the way that you had hoped it would go. And at the base of it, I think we all want safety and stability. And sometimes this process, it probably, I don't know one person that has been through this process that would not say that they have not been through this part of the messy middle. It seems like utter chaos is happening. It's like the more that you try to find your footing, the less footing that you have, and the more the bricks get ripped out from underneath you and destroyed. And you're just like, whoa. So here I am looking for jobs. The job market is terrible right now, and it feels like everything's expensive. It's my breathing. Grounding myself here. So, no job. Applying, not getting any callbacks whatsoever. Thankfully, the company that I just left has paid for a headhunter for 2 months. But I'm not so sure I'm supposed to go back in corporate America. I don't know. It just may be that the job in corporate America that I was in wasn't the job I need to be in. Maybe there's another one I need to be in. I have no idea. I have no idea where things are going. I'm just following whatever at this point, trusting the process. Easier said than done. So I've probably spent the last 3 or 4 weeks just in absolute turmoil because everything seems to be falling apart. And knowing, though, that right before a big breakthrough, things fall apart before they can come back together again. That's how it happens. And it's like we're being tested, but also we're having to ride out this storm, which is incredibly scary, especially if you have pets, human beings that depend on you. It's like, okay, God, I trust, universe, I trust that you're going to come through, but I have people and beings and things that depend on me. And that adds so much more pressure sometimes. And so I definitely threw a few little hissy fits with my higher power over the last few weeks. But Sunday, I think I hit my rock bottom. The last few weeks I've gone inside myself and isolated like I always do. And it was not working out for me. I thought I had surrendered. Just when I thought I had surrendered to the plan and to the universe and to God, the next time I turn around, I realized I had not surrendered to the point I needed to surrender. It's like, how much more do I have to surrender before things are going to happen? Like, what more do you want out of me? And then things got really quiet. It's like they stepped back. God, the universe, my angels, they all step back and they're like, all right, Christine, we're going to watch what you do. We're going to be here. We're going to take care of you. We're not going to let you fall, but you've got to ride this storm out. So I'm like, oh my gosh. So Sunday, I was having a moment and something told me, record it. And so I did. And I watched it back yesterday and it was gut-wrenching. It absolutely was. And one day I'll share it on this channel. That one I might edit a little bit for the message I want to deliver. There's some parts to that I'm not sure I'm quite ready to share yet. But it depends on when I'm ready to share it. And the reason that I would share it is to show people that you're not alone in these little freakouts that you have. Anyone on this journey, maybe someone's journey has been super easy, okay? But the vast majority of us, we can't pretend that we have not been sitting on the floor, sobbing our eyes out, banging our fists into the carpet, the floor, whatever, the wall, wondering what is happening. I'm doing everything right. Why is all of this happening? Okay. So I finally had reached my maximum, and I just reached out to my parents. And I'm so thankful and so blessed that my parents are here. They're alive. They're in their upper 60s. They're retired, and they are able to help me. But in my mind, I didn't want to be a burden, right? I didn't want to ask them for help. And what I find interesting is after I sent these texts to my mom, just laying it all out there for her because I didn't know what else to do, that's when my higher power started showing up again. It's like, Christine, we were waiting for you to ask for help. You can't do all of this on your own. There's a reason we put certain people in your life, but you have to tell people you need help. So I was like, okay, all right, well, so lesson learned there. This whole process is full of lessons learned. So messy middle again. I do think I'm on the tail end. But I trust that if I've still got some messy to go, it serves a purpose. I know it all makes sense. Some of what I've experienced in the last few weeks, it's already coming together and it makes sense. But so I got a breath of fresh air yesterday, or excuse me, Monday, because today's Wednesday. Monday was Labor Day. Okay. Sunday night, my parents came through. Thank you. Labor Day, Tuesday, September 2nd. I was kind of getting my footing, working with this headhunter, trying to do the things, push some things forward. I can't just be sitting here waiting for the blessings to happen. I have to be taking steps, even if I don't know what it is I'm doing. Like, right, of course, I just looked at my timer and it said 11:11. Again, we'll get into signs and synchronicities later, but they wanted me to see that, they being my higher power and my angels. So, brain fart. Let's get back on topic. I'm telling you, again, Unpolished Authentic Soul. So, yesterday, it was about 6:15 p.m. Check my email. Jobs, okay, yep, all right, cool. Yep, headhunter, okay. And then one caught my attention from the company I rent this house from. And it was a letter. It said, hey, Christine, your lease won't be renewed at the end of October. Please drop the keys off, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, excuse me? What? And so I had another moment of meltdown. I had only had a fresh air for like a day, and then the next blow comes. I got in my truck and just went for a drive. And I asked my higher power, I asked God, I said, why? I don't always get an answer. And sometimes I wonder if the answer is my own thoughts. That's another issue in and of itself. But I felt a peace come over me, and what I felt, I was told, was because that house is not in alignment for where you deserve to be. The house, it's great. It's a 4-bedroom, 2.5 bath house, about 1,700 square feet. It served me well for a year, but there are a lot of problems with it. I think it's one of kind of those houses where they threw it together kind of fast. The plumbing's got problems. There's just a lot of issues, and it is a struggle. And I feel like God is trying to move me into a better season. And so this house doesn't really work anymore for that season. So now I find myself no job, losing my house. Thank God I have my parents to help out. Even as I'm speaking, I'm getting a knot in my throat right there. And that's another thing I'm working through, are these blocks that I have. And I may speak to chakras at one point. I'll tell you this, if you had told me 10 years ago that I'd be speaking about chakras and signs and synchronicities, I'd probably think you're crazy. But I've lived it, and I'm a very analytical and very curious person. And I've had enough proof to know that these things are very much real, at least to me in my journey. And so right now my throat chakra is blocked, and it's the one thing that I need for my purpose. Speaking, singing. I have no idea right now at this moment in time where I'm going to land. But that doesn't matter. All that matters is that I know I'm going to be okay. And I try to remind myself of that when my human brain wants to drive the Christine vehicle, you know. And I lived a life full of anxiety, and that's, you know, fear-based. And I've really tried to live a life that is more authentic to my soul. And so oftentimes my heart and my mind are battling it out, you know. And so sometimes all I have at the end of the day is my higher power. There are a lot of days where I don't know if I accomplished anything that day. But maybe the phone call I made 3 hours prior, maybe that moved something along. I don't know. I had no plans of ever singing or being public facing ever. I trust that I can do it. But my plans and the universe's plans don't always meet up, you know? And I trust my higher power more than I trust myself, because my higher power knows what's best for me. And so I never saw myself starting a podcast. I have no idea if this is going anywhere. The only thing I care about at the end of the day is that this reaches at least a few people that this might be able to help. Maybe you're neurodivergent. Maybe you're struggling on your journey. Maybe you feel alone and it seems like everybody's doing everything the right way and I'm messing everything up. No, we're all out here just throwing darts at the board, not knowing what we're doing. At least the vast majority of us. There may be a small set of people that know exactly what they're doing and everything jives just well for them. I am not one of those people, okay? I am clumsy. I am so uncoordinated, it's not even funny. I can guarantee you that one day, I'm sure I'll be performing on a stage somewhere, someplace. I'll probably trip right on my face. But I'm going to get up and I'll laugh. And I'll probably just warn everybody, hey, if I trip and fall down, no, I didn't. You didn't see anything. Because, I mean, I can't even walk and chew gum at the same time without tripping. So, I know it's messy. Some of our healing journeys are more messy than others. Some involve things like addiction. And the thing about healing, okay, and that at the base of your life purpose, and this is one thing I did leave out, I wanted to make sure I covered, is this. Before you can really step into your life purpose, there is a lot of healing that has to go on. And I think throughout this message, you've probably gathered that healing is involved in your life purpose. But I want to make sure that I spell out and I call out to the fact that there is a lot of prep work that has to happen before you actually step into your purpose. And that prep work, it's probably the vast majority of the frustrations you're going to experience in your purpose will be in the prep work. You may not know which end is up some days. You may be spinning in circles some days. You may be crying on the floor, punching the wall. Maybe not everybody punches the wall, but a lot of us who feel very deep emotions, especially those of us that know we have a purpose, that feel almost as if we're chosen, and a lot of us are, we all have a purpose, okay? Whether you're a chosen one or not, everyone could be a chosen one. I have no idea. I know that I'm a chosen one, and I'm following that path. But a lot of us have Spitfire personalities. I'm a Virgo, in case anybody hasn't been able to figure that out. I'm a Virgo. Actually, I did say that that my birthday was this month. But let's just pretend like I hadn't already said that. I may or may not, over the years, have hit my fist into a wall. I don't recommend it, because the wall, if you hit a stud, it's going to win. And trust me, I've broken my hand that way. I absolutely break my hand that way. I'll have to tell a story about that on another episode. But a lot of us have Spitfire personalities, and sometimes we go down fighting hard. But we usually also end up collapsing into surrender, because that's our only option sometimes. We've tried everything. We've exhausted all of our human efforts. We have no idea what we're doing sometimes. And that's okay. That's completely okay. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I didn't just cry my eyes out 3 days ago and not know if I was doing anything right. I'm not going to pretend that I may not cry tonight. I hate crying, by the way, not because it makes me feel weak, although that used to be true about me, but because I don't like the sniffling and like I can't breathe, and then I wear contacts and then my contacts are all foggy, and so I hate crying. But it's very cathartic. It's very cathartic. I don't want to sit here and pretend like I've got everything, all my P's and Q's, whatever, words are hard. I don't want to pretend like I've got all of my I's dotted and my T's crossed. Some of them are crossed, some of them are dotted, some of them are, you can't tell what letter it is, and that's fine. So, whether or not you feel called to a purpose, we all want to know, where is our life going? We all at some point have wondered, why are we here, right? At least everybody that I have talked to. And sometimes we have an idea, sometimes we don't. But again, future episodes, I do want to speak of signs and synchronicities and other ways that you can determine what direction maybe you should be going in. And with that, even if you think that you should be going in one direction and you think that you're right, you may get on down the road and realize, oh wait, this is going to pivot. And you're probably going to pivot. You're going to do some zigzagging along the way for sure. But that's okay. So for me right now, I don't have a job. I don't even have health insurance to get this scar tissue taken care of. I'm still practicing singing, and I'm just going with it. And so right now, my plan is to just keep facing forward, don't look back, at least as best as I can. Rely on my higher power, for comfort and guidance. And just try to do the best job I can do. Embrace the moments where I break down and pick myself back up. But also not numbing out through isolation. And just trying to keep my mind focused on the bigger picture. And maybe I'm hoping that through doing this podcast and helping others, maybe I'm hoping that it helps me as well. I don't know. We shall see. But for now, I'm going to end this. Thank you for watching if you are here. It feels very surreal. See, this is the unpolished part here. I'm telling you. Sometimes my mind gets ahead of, and right now, my timer's going off. So let me stop that. Sometimes my mind gets far ahead of my mouth and vice versa. But hey, you're here with me. If you're still here, thank you. And I will see you in the next episode. So keep being great, keep staying focused, stay positive, and we're all going to get to where we want to be.